to to reduce cardiovascular disease through diet, right? And so there were studies that showed that people who had studied eating fruit and vegetables as a way to reduce cardiovascular disease, because studies show that, especially when you talk about vegetables, per serving of vegetables can actually reduce your mortality rate by 5% if you eat it on a regular basis. So no study had just focused on vegetables. Everybody would eat fruit. That's never an issue, getting people to eat fruit. But it is a little difficult getting people to eat vegetables who typically don't eat a lot of fresh vegetables, right? And so that was the whole premise around this study. How can we change behavior to improve cardiovascular disease through diet? Physical fitness came in as an add-on later on, but the main focus was on diet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed that there was a high correlation between the vegetable intake and improved cardiovascular health, but they were challenged in terms of the effectiveness of whether sustainability and the interventions in and of itself. So what challenges were revealed through this study in terms of intervention and sustainability?
Well, here's the thing, the beauty of it is we were working in churches, right? So that was actually pretty good. And they've had studies done in churches before, but you want to look at, how can we sustain this? So one thing we did find is that if you have the support service or support structure within the church,
Mhm.
it's able to sustain a little bit better. What we
Mhm.
found that was really interesting is um, the support from the pastors was really key in sustaining and making changes and even helping to sustain it. So this study was it's like a hybrid study, which was really unique in that we had Bible study around food, around God's food. What does scripture say about food, right? And we also had nutrition education, so we kind of paired those together. Ideally, it was our hope was that the pastors would teach the Bible study, and then we had facilitators who taught the nutrition education portion of it. And what we found is that the churches that have their pastors teach the Bible study
Mhm.
had a greater impact on their results.
Mhm.
But so the challenges were those pastors that did not teach, the results were still good, but they were not as good,
Mhm.
right? Um, Other barriers, especially if you're going to replicate this in the churches, yeah, in churches, each church is different. They have their own DNA, right? How they function, how they structure their influencers in the church is very important. So you can't just say, oh, take this one program and just run it the way we ran it.
Mhm.
But every church will have to make some tweaks to it, right? In terms of how long you run the program. This program actually ran for 9 months. We met every week. We kind of modeled it off of a disciple program where every week we met for either 2.5 hours or so to go over Bible study and nutrition education because we wanted to be part of who they were. And we noticed through a previous Bible study that my church had done, Faith Community Church, being that it was a weekly structural program,
Mhm.
people were more engaged. So we implemented that into the Alive study. And
Sure.
so you're trying to change behaviors, you need constant reinforcement, right? You need constant reinforcement and constant support. So some of the challenges could be, everybody in the household is not ready to change.
Mhm.
Everybody who participates in the study is not ready to change,
Mhm.
right? So those are some of the barriers that you can encounter in running any type of program that you're trying to change behavior is how ready are the individuals for change.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, you said a few things there. Number one, the pastor was basically leading, right? He was leading this initiative. So you had high level organizational support right then and there. And he was leading the Bible study because I noticed your demographics consisted of half of the yeah, okay. So half of the participants had their college degree or higher education, but they were also suffering with obesity and hypertension as well. And so
Yes.
when you have that shepherd that's involved with that
Hmm.
transcendence, particularly in the African American community, that is so important. It's
Yeah.
relevant today. It was relevant 200 years ago. The
Yes,
pastor
it is.
leading the way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. I absolutely
Yeah.
love that.
And
And
you
the
and you saw the engagement with the pastors who were involved, meaning they were involved in all the activities. You know, those who really embraced it. And just as a point of reference, this study actually came out of a program we were doing with pastors.
yeah, I saw
So
that.
we started
Hmm.
with pastors and working on pastors, the health and wellness of clergy,
Hmm.
because we know clergy tend to put themselves and their health second and third and fourth,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so they burn the candles at both ends. They're super busy, and so we had to say, okay, let's stop. Let's focus just on you,
Yeah.
on your health and wellness,
Hmm.
right? And and so we had these forums where we would bring our professors and our doctors and nurses in to talk about different topics with the
Sure.
pastors. And
Hmm.
just so happened, we were talking about, you know, health and wellness. We was talking about hypertension and high blood pressure. And one of the pastors was like, hey, wait a minute. How can we bring this to our church? So that's actually how we got it into the church.
Hmm. Hmm. That's good. Good. Yeah, there was a cultural component in terms of the Bible study, and you had the small group educational groups. Now, the individuals who led the nutrition studies, were they researchers from Rush University or were they facilitators within the church group?
They were facilitators within the church. So when we try to think about sustainability, and being able to translate this into other settings, we try to equip the people, the members inside, to be able to run the program after we're gone. So we
Hmm.
can leave all the materials, all the supplies, but in order for it to be sustainable, it has to be able to run inside the church after we're gone. So we train members of the church. We also hired members of the church. So the research that we do is called CBPR, Community-Based Participatory Research. And in doing so, we really engage the members of the church in all aspects of the research. If we have to hire people, we hire from within the church because
Hmm.
they know the culture better than anybody else, right? And you have that relationship
Hmm.
um, within the churches among the members, right? They're part of the planning. What we should talk about, what messages resonate in the churches, so they help us tailor it for the environment.
Hmm. I love that. When oh, here's Hannah again. Okay. So when I read the study and I was thinking about the relationship with the pastor to the congregants, and as opposed to someone who's on the same level that's trying to teach the initiative. So from a leadership perspective, I was thinking about Patrick Lencioni. He does this 5 dysfunctions of a team. And so the first one is trust, the very first one, and I noticed that that was actually noted in this study as well, because trust is so important. You have to have that established trust. And with him, within the 5 dysfunctions, when he talked about trust, he talked about predictive trust and vulnerability trust. So the pastor has an opportunity. Basically, he's that leader, so his congregants know what they can expect from the pastor from
Yes.
that point of view. But to say that, hey, I have these health issues too, there are some things that I need to work on myself, it actually brings credibility to the initiative itself. And so the other one was lack of commitment, lack of accountability. inattention to results and lack of conflict. Well, the pastor is basically empowered to navigate right through
Yes,
those things, right, navigate
yes,
right through that dysfunction to get them to the other side. So I
yes,
love this. I was looking at it from a leadership perspective, how he is empowered or she is empowered to
right.
just put forth this initiative. That
Yeah,
that's
and they're
amazing.
there for support, right? If someone is falling off and they know what's going on in their members' lives,
Mhm.
right? And so
Absolutely.
they're there to offer that emotional support as well as, helping them get back on track.
Yeah, yeah. One of the functions that was lack of conflict, and I know in your study, it stated that they did not focus so much on weight loss, but they were looking at that strong correlation between vegetables and health and fitness for the
Yes.
cardiovascular system. I thought
Hmm.
that was great because that brings about a stigma.
It really does. And, because we do this huge assessment, before we actually start the study, people are very self-conscious about their weight.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. And so, this was not about losing weight, even though that would be a byproduct of just your lifestyle changes, right?
mhm,
Um, but we did see reductions in weight and
sure.
results, right? As
Mhm.
people focus more on the education, and they were really the one of the key things in this study was the Bible study that
Yeah.
resonated so much with the participants. What does God say about food and how we should care for our bodies, right?
Mhm.
So that was really key. So that is just it's just something to note. Yeah.
And the Bible study brings about accountability, whether you want to admit it or not, So
Yeah.
you have those scriptures that resonate in your head, in your mind, in your heart, and you said, okay, I don't want to disappoint God, therefore I should. Yeah,
Right.
I
And
love
they
that.
say, well, this is what
Mhm.
Scripture says,
Yeah,
right?
yes. By the way, LaDawne and her husband, we participate in the gospel run. They are very tall and very lean. And so I'm huffing and puffing. I'm a prime example. I need the program myself. So, but
And actually, the gospel
example.
run was a byproduct of this study too. How
Oh,
we
really?
that's
Okay.
how we got involved with the gospel run. Yeah.
Nice, nice. I didn't know that. I
Because
didn't
we
know
didn't
that.
have a physical activity, a physical component of this, but that is something that the participants said that they wanted.
I
They
love
wanted
that.
to do some physical activity. So we created some opportunities, and at the end, instead of trying to design a 5K walk, I'm not a race a 5K planner. I
Mhm.
found Gospel Walk. And so that was a way to engage the church as a whole to participate.
Mhm. And you're living out loud the model you said before. Yeah, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I love the fact that you were accessible to them in another venue. It wasn't the church and Bible study, but outside of that to
Hmm.
engage in some physical activity together. And so that's a team dynamic within itself as well. I love
Yeah.
that.
And I would say
Absolutely.
4 years later, we're still doing it.
Yeah. Well, I know that you're involved in another, is it a run walk event with a community of participants now via Zoom?
Yeah, so every summer we do at Rush, just a way to engage the West Side community because Rush is located on the west side of Chicago, and so just as a point of note, we look at the life expectancy between downtown and the west side. So the life expectancy downtown is 85 years. 3 stops past Rush, which is Garfield Park, it dropped down to 69.
My
And
goodness.
so we're looking at what's happening here? What's causing this drop? And it's not all gun violence because we know there's a lot of gun violence, but it's not that. It's chronic disease, it's heart disease, it's cancer, it's all these things. So a couple years ago, we have because Rush is also a medical school, we have medical students who take on projects, right? Where they actually come up with a project to engage the community.
Sure.
And so one it was called West Side Walk for Wellness. And
Mhm.
so my office picked it up actually, well, we've had it from the beginning. The student is the lead of it, which is nice because they have to get out into the community, which helps them as medical students who are studying to be doctors to be more compassionate and have empathy about the community in which they are serving in, right?
Hmm.
So get to know your neighbors, get to know your community. And so with that, it started off as a 7-week program where every Saturday we would go to Garfield Park, the Golden Dome, off of Eisenhower, and we would have physicians come out and give a talk, and
Yeah.
then we'll walk around Garfield Park. And we started off. The first week maybe you walk a half a mile because you're trying to engage the community, and everybody are not walkers or runners or very active.
Hmm.
But by the end, we make our way up to a 5K. And typically, the last few years, minus this one with COVID, there was what they called a tour of the West Side, which they had 5Ks in that community. So we were kind of preparing people to run in or walk in one of the 5Ks.
Hmm.
So we did the training with them and the education with them. And so this year, because of COVID, we couldn't meet at Garfield Park,
Yeah.
right? And so we didn't want to lose the momentum of having so many people. We have over, 300 people out there every week.
Sure.
And so we decided to do it virtually via Zoom and Facebook. So it turned out to be a really great experience for everybody. We had people who were able to join in from all over the states. We had people from Elgin and the South Holland, and we had people from California and Texas who will, of course, never have been able to come to a walk on a
Sure.
Saturday morning
Yeah.
on the west side of Chicago.
Mm.
So it was really motivating for people. They were very engaged. They brought their families out. They walked together. It was a way of getting people out in COVID and still feeling that connection. So they still felt connected
Mm.
to each other because we had music playing the whole time they were walking and they could engage. We had conversations going for those who wanted to do it. And so it was so successful that we actually extended it 3 weeks
Yeah.
because people weren't ready to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Hmm.
Now, so over in Garfield Park, what impact does a food desert have in that area? Or
Oh,
would that be
food,
deemed a food desert?
it is a food desert. So one of the things we do when we do our studies, we do like needs, we do a survey, we do needs assessment. And
Hmm.
so I'm going to talk about your question in the frame of what I'm about to say. So we did a study, well, not an assessment, so to speak,
Sure.
with 1,100 people from the West Side community.
Hmm.
And one of the things we looked at was like the social determinants of health, right? And
Hmm.
so one of those things, food, housing, transportation, jobs,
Hmm.
education, these are all your social determinants. These are things that impact your health and well-being as well.
Hmm.
And so what we found is that there's a huge level of food insecurity. And so if you don't have good grocery stores, fresh markets, in your community, what do you tend to eat? You eat, junk food, fast foods, a lot of processed foods, right? So being that the West Side is a food desert, slowly they're starting to come in. There's a Pete's that came in, with fresh fruits and
Hmm.
vegetables, but it's a process of coming to the city. A lot of times people have to leave those areas to go to Oak Park if they want, really fresh foods. But the
Hmm.
beauty of it is now there's been a focus on the West Side over the last 3 years
Hmm.
to try to reduce that life expectancy gap. And so you have things like fresh markets coming up, pop-up markets, right? You have an organization called 40 Acres Fresh Fruit and Vegetables. So they're spending time developing gardens and selling fresh fruit and vegetables, so we could bring that to the community. But there's huge food insecurities on the west side.
Hmm. No, so as I was listening to you, this will increase the sustainability of the program as well with the proper infrastructure.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's
Yes.
good.
So of course, now, if you have those things in your community, if you have a place to get, fresh food and vegetables and fruits and healthy foods, then people have a place to go. They can now incorporate that into their diet, because it's all about changing the diet. But
Sure.
if we can't provide the food for them to change, how can people change?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. The videos that were viewed, were they produced by Rush University?
Yes, they were produced by us.
Yeah. I love that.
Not by our marketing department,
Okay.
but by
Okay.
our preventative medicine department. So yeah.
Okay.
So we videoed, we wrote the script, we had worked with dietitians, to lay out all the information, and yeah, it's all on the website.
Yeah, that's wonderful. No, that's wonderful. So I can see you displaying your acting careers, right?
Oh no, I
Your
know, I
acting
know,
talent.
you know me.
You're
I'm a
just
behind the scenes
you're,
lady.
okay. No,
I
I
help
love,
pull it all together.
I
I
love
don't
that.
do the recording.
Another aspect was the lack of knowledge in terms of food preparation. So how was that conveyed to your participants?
So we know how to cook. We just sometimes don't cook in a healthy way. So what we did, we tried to offer alternatives to the way we normally cook. And so as a one example, we were talking about greens, right?
Hmm.
And preparing greens differently. And so during the session, it was like, okay, here's a recipe. Instead of cooking it our traditional way, what if we saute the greens, right?
Hmm.
And the reaction, because I remember sitting in that session at my church when they were teaching that session, the reaction was like, oh no, oh, we have to boil our greens or cook our greens for 3, 4, 5 hours. You don't, what do you mean saute your greens? But somebody did go and do just that. And the
Okay.
person who had the strongest reaction actually went and tried it and
Oh.
came back and said it was really good and it was quick. And so that engaged other people in the class. Said, okay, well, I'm going to go try it now, right?
Hmm.
We tried to introduce other types of vegetables. We introduced eggplant, because that is not a traditional vegetable that we typically go out and buy. And if we buy it, how do you prepare eggplant anyway, right? So we would do some demonstrations. So in particular with that one, I actually made eggplant parmesan and brought it in to
Hmm.
the class to taste, right? Because if you don't know what it tastes like, you're not really going to try it.
Sure.
And as a result, one person said they actually served it for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So they've tried to change how they serve some of their food, right? Or just how to just tweak your recipes.
Hmm.
We know we like comfort food, and we're not trying to take that away. But how can we just make it a little healthier
Yeah.
and make healthier choices?
Yeah. I'll remember, and I'm not going to say anything. I won't call any names because her daughter is online right now. But when my sister came up to visit me, I went to Walmart and I purchased potato salad. Oh my goodness! And she said, "No, no, 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 no. We have to get the potatoes, peel the potatoes." It became a cultural thing. It's like, you know better. You grew up better than that.
Yeah. Well, that's it's
And I really
that's
appreciate that.
process. You don't know
Mhm.
how they prepare. They put a lot of sodium and all this stuff
Absolutely.
in it. And so when you prepare food yourself, you have more control over, how you're preparing it, how much salt you put in.
Absolutely. Hmm.
So you can regulate some of those things.
Hmm. And then there's another participant, I won't call her name out either, but she cooks everything fresh. Everything fresh.
Yeah.
The,
And
the,
that is really the best
yeah,
way. It's such a much more healthier option. But you know what? Frozen is good too.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
Fried
get
frozen.
it out the can if you can. Vegetables are good.
Yeah.
So
So I'm interested in your, let's see, the 40 acres fresh fruit and vegetables. Is that a play on words? 40 acres.
I'm sure
Is that
it's
a
not
cultural
ours.
thing
It's
where,
actually it's a business on the west side. Yeah. So it's a business that started, I think, a couple of years ago.
yeah.
In response to the fact that there's a food desert and there's not really good fruit and vegetables. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the infrastructure, transportation, did did the congregants have access I know you mentioned Oak Park, but within Garfield Park, was the infrastructure there for them to get to the stores themselves?
Well, so so this is what, what I've learned doing listening sessions that we have in the community, especially around transportation, so you hear at one time, the West Side was it was a very vibrant community, right? And
Mhm.
you had buses on every major line. Well, that's not the case so much now,
Okay,
right? So if you don't drive, then you're going to have a hard time getting away. That means you have to get someone to take you outside of your community
sure.
to buy fruit and vegetables, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the city has also worked on. They have I think it's the city. They have a mobile fruit and vegetables truck that will
Oh,
come around throughout the summer. And I think it's a city. And if it's not, forgive me. I don't want to give credit where it's not due. But yeah, so they're looking at different ways um, to bring food into the community. One thing we did at Rush, we partnered with an organization called Top Box, and
hmm,
Top Box has fresh fruit and vegetables along with other produce. I mean, other products. They have chicken and meats and fish and things like that. But we actually started off making it available to our employees, right? Because
mm-hmm.
you have our employees are our first community, right?
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
and you have members of your first community employees who may be food insecure themselves, and
Sure.
so you could buy these boxes of like 5 pound, I think they're 5 pound boxes of fruit and vegetables, and they would come around once or twice a month, and they would just take, it was like $15, and Rush supplemented the difference, right?
Good.
But we also gave boxes away to churches, so because you have perishable items, the day of pickup, you pick up the boxes. Anything that's not picked up, we sent to churches for their members.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
And we partner with them even now, especially during COVID-19. We partner with Top Box a lot to give food boxes to seniors who were at home, sheltered in place, couldn't get out, for people who were food insecure that we knew from our assessment, and for people who were leaving the hospital who were food insecure. So we use Top Box to get food to them.
Are there any plans to replicate the same model in the schools and CPS?
Well, they have their own system,
Okay.
so we were not called upon to help with getting food to the schools, right? So they have their own way of managing that process. So I know they offer food, breakfast, I think breakfast and lunch during the COVID period. So the city took care of that, or the school district took care of that.
Well, even replicating the model for testing and
Oh, for
health and
testing.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so go back because we didn't
Okay.
quite talk about the model for testing.
Okay. So I'm looking at this Alive project, and it focused on congregants in the church, and we talked about the cultural relevance in terms of the pastor, and so you delineate it down from there. But I'm wondering if you could do the same testing in schools, elementary and high schools, to see if there's some correlation between vegetables and healthy living, because
Oh, I'm
as
sorry.
we, no, yeah, because we understand now that even now younger people are suffering with diabetes and some cardiovascular issues as well. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering if you could use that same model and do the testing within those schools, within that area.
Well, it would have to be tailored to the schools because
Sure.
ours is tailored to one, adults,
Okay.
right,
Okay.
and two, churches. So when you're talking about students, that's a whole different segment
Sure.
that
Sure.
you're trying to intervene on, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Because kids don't go to the grocery store,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? They don't shop. So it's kind of hard to change their behavior. If we can help parents change their behaviors, it could trickle down. Now, it also can trickle. It can move upward, right?
Mhm.
If kids are exposed to gardening and eating healthy, that certainly can, change behavior going up in the family, because
Sure.
then they begin to demand, you know, different types of foods.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
certainly a study could be done
Yeah.
in the schools. But we tend to work just with adults, because working with students or with young kids are different.
Sure. 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 Goodness. Well, I am going to open up the floor to questions from our participants, and I'm going to see if there is a way for us to view questions from Facebook as well. So let's
Okay.
just open up the floor. Anyone have questions?
I do. I was making notes as I was listening, and I have like a little half page of, I don't know, comments, questions.
Okay.
But I'm just going to say, the
From
work
Facebook.
that you're doing is awesome.
Open up the floor. Could you guys hold on a second? That's Facebook. Okay. Anyone have questions? Wait, hold on, guys.
I do.
Yes, Miss
I
Johnson
was
has some
making
questions.
notes.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. Nardalyn, continue, please.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can
Yes.
hear you. So that
Okay.
was live actually interacting. Okay, we're ready. We're
Okay.
ready.
I'm just going to say that this is just awesome work that you're doing. And finding a way to make it virtual during this time is also just creative thinking and continuing this process along. I do have a couple things. So you take this into the churches and then you ask for participants to join, like how do you approach the members to say, hey, we have this study, go in and then encourage them to participate? How do you do that?
What we do, that's our recruitment process. So we go into the church. The pastors typically will share with the congregation, what we're working on there, introduce us. We're here to talk about the program. But because they were in the program, they are advocates for us, right? So then we would talk to the congregation. They may give us a few minutes to say, hey, this is what we're working on, a study to reduce cardiovascular disease. We give a little bit about information. If you're interested, we're going to have an information session after service, and come join us then. And that's where people will come and join us and
Awesome.
learn
So
more about it.
is your inclusion criteria then just a willingness to participate pretty much?
Well, we do have inclusion and some exclusionary criteria. So yes, um, so with that particular program, really it was anyone who wanted to join. You had to be 18 years and over. I'm trying to think if there was anything that precluded that we had to exclude them from. Um, for that study, I don't believe there was anything major that we had to that would cause us to exclude anyone. So we
There
was
was
Oh,
able
one.
to.
I think there was one. If it was less than 500 calories, they included that participant. They excluded that participant from the study.
Well, no, she's thinking talked about recruitment at the beginning.
In terms of recruitment.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
ready.
at the beginning, there's still some,
Sure.
you can have some inclusionary variables as well.
Yeah, yeah.
oh, okay. And then once you get going with that, how did you collect the data from it? Was it via questionnaire or forum? Like what tool did you use to get that data from the participants once they met your inclusion exclusionary criteria?
Well, so we did questionnaires. We do a huge questionnaire, which is always just way too long. We have not mastered how to trim that down. But we do a really exhaustive questionnaire. Plus, we do measurements. We take weight, height, blood pressure. Um, yeah, those were the three we took for that: weight, height, blood pressure, waist circumference. We also did dietary recalls. And that is, yeah, we did dietary recalls on everyone. And so what that entails, what that entailed is calling someone 3 times at 3 different points in a week and just finding out what is it that you eat. So I may call you and say, okay, Ms. Johnson, on yesterday, can you tell me what did you eat? And it's a real detailed process of, oh, well, I had bacon and eggs, but did you have 1 egg or 2? Was it fried? Was it, poached? Was it, scrambled? How did you prepare it? Did you use butter? Did you use olive oil? So we get down to the real granular methods of how you're eating, right? And we do that 3 times. We do it twice during the week, a weekday, and once on the weekend, because we know people eat differently on weekends.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So
okay.
we capture all that information as well.
Yeah, this is great. I get excited about research. And the reason I do, just so you know, I did research nursing for about almost 2.5, 3 years. So I always find the benefit of it. And I'm excited when people do these type of studies, especially in the churches, the congregation that you're doing, incorporating the exercise and converting. So I really do like that a lot. And just one question, what do you find is the right amount of vegetable in your diet?
So since we were looking at cardiovascular disease and how to reduce premature death, mortality, so we look at if you did a half a serving is a half a cup a day. So 1 serving a day, if you did this every day, you could reduce your risk of death mortality by 5%.
Love that.
And so, it
Wow.
goes up exponentially until you get to 25%. So at 2%, 2 servings a day is 10%. At 3 servings is 15%. So at 5 servings, it's about 25%. But that means you're eating 5 servings, which is 5 half a cups, which really is not a lot of vegetables, right? If you think about it. And so if you did this every day, you are actually helping to improve your risk factors for cardiovascular disease.
Oh, okay, this is awesome. I have so many more questions, but I'm going to let somebody else go.
Okay. Well, thank you for your questions.
Sure.
Dr. Stein or Hannah?
I just want to say hello to everyone. I'm kind of like en route here, but LaDawne, awesome work. The only question I would have would, what has been some of the results of from people who've actually gone through the months of rigorous hanging in there with you?
So for that study, we saw a reduction in blood pressure. Things like 2 points in blood pressure. We did measure both systolic and diastolic. We had a reduction in waist circumference, in weight, as well as A1C. And that was huge because we had, in this population or in this study, we had high levels of obesity, hypertension, pre-diabetes, and diabetes. So just to get those, and those were not, so we weren't, that was not our ultimate goal, but we were tracking those things.
That's interesting. Well, did they attribute it to one factor over another, or was there an overall reason for the reductions?
Well, we kind of have to take a look at everything, so one thing where we know that made a difference is who taught the Bible study.
Yeah.
That we know for sure because we saw it differently across the 5 churches, right? And so those churches that the pastors actually taught the Bible study had greater increases in their results. But you have to look at, the education part. So we can't say it was just the education or it was just a Bible study. It was a combination of all of that.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you for your question, Terry.
I was looking at the theoretical constructs you have for both, and one was the social cognitive theory and the self-determination theory in terms of motivation. And so you are using your social norms with motivation to get underneath. Those are the underpinnings to look at whether this program is successful or not. And so all of those things are just amazing to me. They really are. This is an incredible study. The feasibility is there and it's relevant. And so I'm really excited about it. I can't wait until you replicate it again. I'm trying to figure out how we can, be a part of that study.
Yeah.
Right, Nadaline?
Well, here's the
Absolutely, yes.
the interesting thing about it. I still get comments now, even from members of our church who, if they start to slip, they would say, we need to bring back a live. We need to do that live study. Or if I go into one of the other churches, they're like, oh, they're still giving updates on, oh, we're still doing this, or we're still doing that. So it's easily replicable, right? We have all the materials. We made all the materials available for the churches if they wanted to continue with it, right? It's really about embracing the change, embracing just the knowledge of it. I remember we had a participant in one of the churches who I know they were only there because their spouse initially was there, and I'm sure they were thinking, why am I here? But in the midst of the study, early on, they learned that they were diabetic. And they instantly started to then grab hold of what they were learning and made such a transformation in their own lifestyle that, their doctor actually took them off of medication while they were on the study. And we heard time after time again, people were coming off of medication because of the results.
Amen. Miss Hannah, do you have any questions? Did we lose her?
Hello, everyone. No, I'm still here.
Okay.
Hello. Sorry, I'm traveling, so I did not come. I didn't come on. But I think this is awesome. Miss Jenkins, I think what you're doing is great. I think especially for some of us who have inherited unhealthy eating habits, that this is great. I would be interested to know that if anyone was monitoring and tracking, because you just mentioned that people were coming off of medication, if anyone is tracing, because our bodies self-heal if we give it the right substance to allow it to do so. So I was wondering if the metabolic systems, if anyone was tracking like gut health, heart health, all of the systems of the body. And maybe that's further research and study. But,
yes.
I know the body to be a self-healer, and, I don't take any medications. I'm almost 60. I don't take any medications. I do try to exercise, but I eat right. And so I like the fact that you incorporated Bible study and education, because I think that's key in making sure that people understand why they're doing it, but also that, our bodies can self-heal themselves if we adhere to what God says we should be eating. So I was just wondering if there's going to be further study in your program, or if you've even thought about it, about tracking all of the systems of the body to include the immune system. Because I noticed too with myself that when I'm eating healthy, like I usually suffer with allergies. I don't have any of that. So I'm just wondering if there were any bodily systems that you guys plan to track in the future, or if you're doing it now,
Yeah, thank you for that question. No, we're not doing that level of tracking. This was a NIH grant, a National Institute of Health grant, so they give a grant specifically for, certain things. So that's not our expertise, to dive that deep into, your system and healing. So hopefully someone is doing that somewhere. We aren't. As a result, actually, of doing this study, we just received actually another NIH grant to do a 5-year hypertension study in churches. So we're going to be it's going to be a much larger study. We're looking at like 28 churches, almost 300 people, focusing on hypertension.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think additional study is necessary so that we can understand it, but I might understand that you're working on grants. So thank you for your response. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes. Additional questions? Thank you, Hannah. No one has additional questions. Well, LaDawne, I want to thank you so much for coming on, agreeing to be a part of a hashtag Friday Night Chats. I so appreciate you, and this knowledge is so important and relevant for all of us, particularly now during COVID-19. That I love the research. I downloaded your studies so that I can extract this information. And
Well, you should try. You know, once we get back into the church, get going. You should see if you can replicate it. All the information I give you, website is still there. All the videos, all the materials, and see if you can get some traction around it.
Okay, that's good. That's very good.
I
Thank you.
do have one question, Dr. Love. Can I interject here? For the vegetables that you do and the different recipes that you show, is that something also that you have recorded? So if somebody's not like a great in the kitchen person, or if somebody want to try something new, like you said, that they could go back after you've demoed it and just watch these videos and see how to prepare it?
Yes, so I'm not sure I'm not sure which videos we have on food demonstrations. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but all the materials is there. Everything the participants received is online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The recipes that we chose, they're online as well.
And is there any financial support? Like somebody have just a heart, but they don't have the resource financially to eat healthy, because sometimes the unhealthy stuff seems to be a little better pricing. So is there any financial support through the study, or that's afforded through the grant that you give to the participants who want to be able to purchase the right foods?
Well, so for that study, we did not do that. We did not give any stipends for food for that study. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't happen. It depends on, so some of our participants were in food deserts at that time. Not everyone, not all the churches were. In the case of the West Side, they are food deserts for sure. So if we were to do a study like this, we probably would figure out a way to do something around some vegetables. So after our screening, we did a couple other small studies on the West Side around physical limitations and diet. And I know one of them, I believe, and we're doing one now, and they're using Top Box, and they're going to actually have food delivered to the individuals.
Oh,
But
amen.
typically
That's awesome.
with the study, there's not that much. It's a lot of money, but it takes a lot of money to run these programs. So we can't we pay participants for their data, but we don't have extras to give to like for individuals to go buy particular things.
Okay. Amen. Great work you're doing. Keep going. It's awesome work.
Yeah. Yes,
Thank
indeed. This is excellent work, and Nardalyn is thinking right now how we can institute this program at Trinity. I know her. So we are tremendously blessed. We are tremendously blessed. And so I want to thank you once again for joining hashtag Friday Night Chats, discussing health, fitness, and well, especially the impact of mental health, but it was far beyond that discussion. Really, it was far beyond that discussion. And so next week, everyone get ready. We are going to have Kesha Kent. She is going to discuss networking your superpower. So I'm excited about that. And thanks everyone for joining tonight. LaDawne, thank you once again. I know
Thank you for having me.
A fresh dinner. I owe you one. But I just want to say good night to everybody and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, LaDawne.
God bless.
Thank you,
Bye.
Terry.
God bless.
Bye, ladies.